Hi everyone, my name is Miami Gold. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am here with the lovely and phenomenal CEO of 525 Entertainment Group and President of Women in Music, Nicole Barsalona. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. We're so excited to have you. So, we're going to go straight into the questions. How did you get started in the music industry?
My parents were actually both in the business. My mom was a rock journalist from England, and my dad was an agent. And so I grew up around it and wanted to have nothing to do with it as a kid. And so I went to college. Actually, I studied crisis communications and PR. And I started taking internships and just realizing that kind of a 9 to 5 corporate attire situation was not really what I was looking for after all. And so I took kind of a temporary gig for a week at a company called Renegade Nation over the summer after I graduated college. And it was supposed to be like a week long kind of an internship to help with this festival they were putting on. And so it was this big thing on Randall's Island in New York, and I had to deal with the VIP ticketing, and I had no idea what was happening, but they threw me in the deep end, and it was amazing. I was like working with artists and with the promoters and with the agents and with everyone kind of on the ground, the crew at the festival trying to figure stuff out. And the stage broke in the middle of the festival. It was this rotating stage, and it was just like madness and chaos, and it felt like home to me. So I fell in love with it, and I ended up working there at Renegade Nation with Stephen Van Zant, who's a musician and producer and actor and a million other things at his company there. And I ended up being kind of chief of staff and director of operations. We didn't have formal titles back then, but it was a really amazing way to kind of start my career and get to work on a million different projects in the creative space. And from there, I really decided I'd been working on tour with him and Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band for a couple of years when they were touring.
Mhm.
We were traveling all the time, and it was incredible, incredible work. But also, I felt like I wanted to be involved in the beginning stages of an artist career. And so I ended up leaving and going out on my own as an artist manager to try it out because it's something I'd always wanted to do. So I gave myself kind of a year to see how it was going to go. And I loved it. And I was so lucky to meet some incredible artists who I work with today. And that's how I got started. But I think for me, Women in Music was a really important connector because I became a member there in 2011 when I left my company and my job and went out on my own. And I needed this infrastructure that I wasn't going to have without having that company behind me all of a sudden. So, I needed an entertainment attorney to learn from, and I needed publishing folks to kind of get my artists, whether it was a sync licensing contract that came in or just like an opportunity to write for a film or TV. I needed like those resources that I just didn't have anymore. Even like accounting, all of a sudden I had to do all of my own books and stuff for my company. So a lot of different things that went into it that I wasn't really expecting when I kind of had that big dream idea of working with artists. There are all those other kind of logistical things that come with it, and really needing those resources came to the forefront for me. So that's when I found Women in Music and just found this incredible community of people who I could lean on and go to whenever I needed something. And, I would write back then, all we had was a Google group really, other than our in-person events in New York. And I could write to that Google group and say, hey, is there an entertainment attorney who maybe could sit down and talk to me for 5 minutes and give me advice, or 10 minutes. And I found my dear friend, Jennifer Newman Sharp there, who ended up being the vice president of Women in Music, and who helped me craft the beginning contracts of my first clients, and was an integral part of kind of how I grew and learned myself. So it was a really, really important network for me to build, and still to this day is a network that I lean on all the time. So
Lovely. So, in order to last in the industry, one, you have to be passionate, and two, that's the only way you can. It's really competitive. So, if you're not passionate, there's no longevity. So, what moment in your career made you fall in love with the industry?
it's a really good question. I would say there are like a lots of moments that I fell in love with the industry and a lot of moments that I fell out of love with it. And I think that's kind of the way it goes in our business, and probably in any business. That first week when I had that temp gig at that festival, and I was working with people who I had never met before and was just like learning and growing and doing all of these things for the first time. There was one guy who said, he was a part of the kind of promoter and crew for the building of the actual festival. He said to me, I walked in one morning to the trailer and I said, like, good morning, or happy Tuesday, or whatever I said as a 22-year-old, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited to have a job for a week. And he said, "Why are you so effing perky?" He used the full word. And I thought like, like that really just like squashed my excitement for the day, you know? And so I thought like, wow. And that was kind of the vibe a lot in the industry, you know, at times when someone can kind of like take your enthusiasm and just kind of bang it down a little. And so that was, I remember just thinking like, wow, I love this business. I love everything we're doing, but I don't love when I kind of, you know, find people like that who just kind of are, you know, maybe not having a good day and then translate, you know, to you not having a good day. So I remember that being a way that I was like, okay, I don't want to be like that, you know. And I think you kind of meet people or come into circumstances in our business where you're like, wow, I hope to like aspire to craft my career like this person has, or I don't want to end up being angry and miserable like this person, you know. And you really kind of like take those little pieces and I think build a career that you hope to build based on kind of that knowledge base, right? And those people. And it's such a personality based business. And there are so many different personalities. And so I think I had moments where, you know, I realized like, wow, I don't love this business. I don't love that piece of it. And I don't love that kind of attitude. But then there are moments where, you know, I went to at South by Southwest years ago, I went to a panel. I think it was probably 2013. So it would have been in my mid 20s, I guess. And it was moms in music, and it was artist managers who are moms. And artist management was what I was hoping to really build, right? And I always wanted to also have a family, and there were times on tour or in my old job that I realized that I wasn't going to be able to sustain being away for 2 months at a time on tour in Europe and, you know, having a family back home. And so that always seemed kind of like a looming reason to leave the business for me. And I went to this panel at South by Southwest, saw these artist manager moms talking about how they were able to sustain both a family and career in whatever insane capacity they were able to do it. And moments like that were like, okay, I can do this. This is the business I still want to be in. I can have this passion and this like exciting, crazy career and also like a normal life at home or close to normal, you know? So moments like that were really meaningful to me. I think like as an artist manager, seeing one of your artists accomplish something that they had put on their kind of bucket list is just amazing. And it, you know, sometimes I'll look around and be like, wow, I can't believe we did that thing, you know, and or something comes along and we say no to it because it's just not the right fit right now. And I'm like, I can't believe we just said no to that thing that, you know, 5 years ago would have been like, we never would have thought that opportunity would have even come our way. So those moments are really kind of keep you going. And then I think seeing like the success of some colleagues who I've kind of grown in the business with as well are reasons where I'm like, this is the greatest business in the world, because you get to see people grow and get to do things that they, you know, dreamed of doing. And so I think it's kind of, you know, it's something new every day, good or bad. But for the most part, those are the moments that I really point to and get to celebrate.
Lovely. So you did mention falling out of love with the industry. So what advice would you give to someone who lost their drive, helping them find their spark again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I actually stepped out for 2 years in 2011 after I left my first job. I really needed to kind of reassess what I wanted from my life and from the business. And it's just so grueling that I think you can get stuck. And I know I, you know, speak to young women all the time, some of whom right now are really stuck in this place where they're overworked
Mm.
and really stressed out and trying to think of like what to do next. And does this make sense? And do they want to stay in this business? And I think that really does happen. Like after a few years of working nonstop and getting to a place where you thought you wanted to be, and then just feeling overworked and like underappreciated, and that you're still like clawing at everything so much all the time that it's exhausting. And you ask yourself if it's worth it. I think for me, I really took a year off. I did something completely different. My husband was actually a business school, so I worked in the leadership department at the university. So that again was a very different experience. It was very 9 to 5. And it wasn't like creative, and I wasn't getting what I really loved out of it. And so it made me realize that like, you know what, no matter how grueling and insane music is, it really is my passion. And so I got back into it, but I tried to, you know, do something that was going to be more on my terms. And so I found a place where I was able to work with artists. I work with international artists. So I, found that line where it's like, I'm not working with artists here day to day. I'm working kind of on longer term strategy for international development. And that's where, for me, I get kind of that balance of what I wanted. So I think it's really a matter of like stepping back, assessing exactly what you want, and then trying to figure out a way to find a piece of the business that like fits that for you, rather than you trying to fit into something else, because round peg, square hole, whatever that metaphor is, it can be really, really hard, and it really can kind of dissuade you.
So you created your own path by founding your own management company. So what makes 525 different from other artist management firms?
That's a good question. I think that, I didn't know, I worked as like an assistant and a tour manager to Steven Van Zandt. So I was doing like a lot of day to day stuff that was, not as like big picture creative. And he was so senior in his career already. He had, done so much for decades that we were saying no to things more than we were saying yes. So what I really wanted to do was be involved in the starting stages of someone's career and get to like build the vision.
Hmm.
And that's where I found that international development was really great. I was able to bring artists who weren't yet developed in the North American market and find ways for them to enter the market here and grow. Um, and so for me, that was a really great way of getting to like add value for them to have someone on the ground here who knew the market here, and then getting to learn more about those other markets. So right now, one of my clients is Pratik Kuhad out of India,
Hmm.
and he was named to Obama's list of favorite music in 2019. Like we've just had some incredible. He's signed to Elektra Records here. We've had some incredible success domestically, but like internationally, it's been so incredible for me to learn about the Indian market and the music market there, which is so different, and really burgeoning. But really operates differently than how we operate here. Or through Women in Music, I'm able to learn. We're doing this conference with MEDEM in Africa, and I'm like learning about the African music market, which, from market to market within the continent is so vastly different. And so I think really for me, the benefit has been like being able to craft this organization where I get to work in these different global markets rather than just dealing with day to day here and having my head down, and hopefully bringing that perspective to my artists and to the partners that we work with, just having that kind of more of a like a global sense of what's happening and trying to stay on top of growth, outside of the bubble, because we really are in a super small bubble here in the US music market.
That's very true. So, what I'm noticing in the industry, especially with like my generation, it's like women are finding their own companies or finding their tribes, women in music. So, what is it like being a female leader in the music industry?
I have to say it's changed a lot. Like when I first joined Women in Music, and when I first started working, it was like just a very different energy. I work now with so many people who are under 30 who like they're just inclusive in how they operate. Like it's just a very different mentality. In fact, a lot of the younger men I work with are like some of the people who rope me and other women in more, to things that they're doing. And so I think that like just the entire infrastructure has really changed a lot in the business. There's still this kind of old school mentality, and I grew up during like the sex, drugs, rock and roll era, and so it was very, very different. And women most often were not included in conversations. People of color were not included in conversations, and so I think that like being able to work with so many women and women of color now is exciting, because on my teams, it's not like on purpose necessarily that I'm working with mostly women. It's just because there are so many more women and women of color working around me that like I'm all of a sudden finding myself in meetings where it's all women, and I might be the only white woman on the call. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is vastly different from how it was 15 years ago. And, we still have so much more to do, and so much more work to be done to be like truly inclusive and representative. But I think that we've just made so many strides, and it's a really empowering time to get to work with people who have a very different vision of what they want the industry to be from what it was. And it's exciting to kind of be able to be around those folks who have that vision.
Women are the future. Let's go us.
Sure.
So, what inspired you to get involved with women in music?
So it really was that need for me to find a network. And I was really lucky to have grown up in the business and kind of know that kind of older school, infrastructure of people who were really at the top of the business. but I couldn't like go if I, knew a high power attorney through someone. I couldn't go to them and ask them a question about a really basic artist contract because I felt that that was just silly, right? I wasn't going to like A, waste someone's time, and B, seem like I didn't know what I was talking about. And so I had to build a network of my peers who I could actually go to and learn from. And I think that was really so instrumental in me being able to do anything that I've done with artists or clients or partners, is really having that network to lean on. In fact, I just texted this morning one of my colleagues at Women in Music, who I've kind of been with since I joined the board in 2013. And I text her all the time about stuff that comes up. Like I have a client situation in publishing unfolding I have a question about, and I text her and she's able to say like, okay, well, here's what, the standard is on this thing. And, this is what I would recommend you going back with. And so even though I have like a label team and, a high power entertainment attorney and like all of these folks now on our team, which was like a dream scenario back when I started, I'm still going to my friends at Women in Music who I work with day to day, who are experts in their field, because rather than going to someone on our team, I can just get really quick information and then have that kind of in the back of my head as expertise when I do go on to have other conversations with our teams. And so it's just this really incredible supportive network of people who kind of like have aligned values, and really want to see people succeed and support one another, and also like pulling up younger folks, not even younger, we're actually doing a webinar on ageism later this month, but like anyone who needs a little boost, just making sure that we have resources and education, and kind of people to stick their hand out and say, hey, I know about this, let me share what I know and hopefully help you. So it's pretty exciting.
Lovely. So, who's a woman that inspired you or motivated you in your career?
um there were a few. I have to say, like as a younger person coming into the business, Barbara Skydell, who actually worked with my father, she, I don't know, she deserves a lot more recognition, I think, than she's gotten, but she was the vice president of Premier Talent Agency, and like had her hand in some of the most important agency work of the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And she was a real force, but she was like she was just a wonderful woman to be around. She was like not heavy handed, but also really strong. She like balanced that line that we all would love probably to balance, right? And then the other woman was Michelle Anthony, who's now at Universal Music, and she was a mentor of mine. Super strong, brilliant woman. Does not take any shit from anyone, and just a real mentor. I don't know that anyone who doesn't know her personally knows this, but she probably has helped more women than you could count just by offering advice or bringing them to a meeting, or any of the million of ways she does that. She brought me to a meeting when I said I wanted to get into artist management. She told me I could come with her. She had a meeting with her client's attorney. I went, I just listened. I kind of like, they asked me who I wanted to work with. I introduced the information about this artist that I was thinking about managing, and they told me the 10 reasons why I would have trouble pitching that artist as a client. And it taught me more in those 10 minutes than I would have learned probably in years. So it was just a really impactful moment in time for me. And I ended up working now with this attorney who was like then this like looming figure, now is one of the attorneys for one of my clients. So it came really full circle. But I think like the impact of having a female mentor really is just goes beyond what you can put into words. All of kind of the ripple effects of that, of just her letting me into that meeting to just listen for 5 minutes, or have the ear of someone who'd worked in the business for decades with some of the biggest artists. Having that opportunity was really, really huge. So
Awesome. And you also mentioned mentorship. And I love that like so many organizations are starting mentorship programs, because it's just like for me, I'm from Maryland, so it's not a music city. I have
yeah,
no connections to the industry. So it's just like I literally had to travel to New York every other day to my internship. But now it's just like, hey, we can help you or this way. So I just love that for like younger people and like older people as well. So let's go
yeah.
so whether in women in music or your management company, what has been your favorite project that you've worked on?
Wow, that is a tough one. Uh, um, there are so many. I have to say, really recently, we did a Women's History Month project, and it's on our YouTube channel, Women in Music,
Mhm.
youtube.com/womeninmusic.org, I think it is. With some incredible folks. I wanted to just bring together people from all of these other organizations we work with all the time because their work is so impactful. And I think that there's this perception that we all work in silos separately, but we actually collaborate all the time. And so I wanted to kind of highlight that. We had Ty Stiglorius, who's John Legend's manager,
Mhm.
speak. She blew my mind. Ebony Smith from Atlantic Records, who runs an organization called Gender Amplified. Oh my gosh, I literally get chills every time I hear her speak. Just some incredible women. We had Brittany Howard do a performance, Brady Carlisle, Sophia Valdez, like so many amazing artists. And it was just a way to celebrate kind of like all of the work that's being done by so many people. And there are so many other organizations, like you said, doing mentorship and other things. And I think like the more of us that are doing it, the better for everyone. So that was a really cool project because I got to hear just these incredible women speak on that topic. And then, when I worked with Stephen Van Zandt, he had a radio show called Little Steven's Underground Garage. And we did international affiliate acquisition for that. So like for a few months, I just worked on pitching the show to stations around the world.
Mhm.
We had a station in Russia, I think it was, pick us up. There was a Helsinki station that picked us up. And it was just like an exciting moment for me because I was just literally picking up the phone, calling these places, or like back then emailing, but it was, you still kind of called everyone back then. And it was just really exciting because it made me realize like, oh, there's no like big machine that's doing this, right? It's like just me on my phone. It's not like a huge operation. And yet you realize that like just picking up the phone and having a conversation makes an impact and like moves something forward, and you accomplish something in a way that like I think sometimes in this business you assume there's like all of this stuff behind a curtain happening, and it's like no, it's just someone on the phone starting a relationship with another person. And so realizing that that's how it worked and like that I could do that, and it was really kind of a powerful realization that that's how business gets done. And it doesn't matter how much infrastructure you have behind you. It's just a matter of starting those relationships and starting those conversations.
And I love that you mentioned that you were the one picking up the calls and like taking the initiative to do that because I feel like that just like humanized the industry because it is intimidating. It's just like, oh my goodness, this is Nicole. So it's just like you can send cold call emails, you can call people, but the fact that you said that, it's just like it might inspire the next person to follow their dreams or shoot their shot through LinkedIn. You just never know. It might open doors for you. So I just love that you said that.
And to that point, really quickly, like we had someone reach out the other day through Women in Music saying, like, I didn't get this internship, I didn't get this job, da 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 da. Da. And I just said to her, like, if you just start relationships with this organization, like just meet people, and you don't have to meet like the people who are, the C-suite executives. Just meet people who are your peers, and you'll just like learn so much and grow. And those relationships are how you end up like growing in your career. Because, if I know someone is looking for a digital marketing associate and I know someone who's an amazing digital marketer who I happen to, speak to at a panel or something, you just like, that's how it all happens. So just really getting to know people and getting involved in any way you can is the best way to do any of it.
And another gem that you just said, peer-to-peer networking. Because everyone's trying to get to like the C-suite level. Like the people that you're working with now are going to be with you 10 years later. So get to know them.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so true. You don't really think about it, but those are the people that are the most important. And at the end of the day, I think you learn, the most from probably are the people who are really doing something a little bit different, but like at your level. And then you can kind of all grow together. It's pretty powerful.
Love it. So we're going to go into the next question. In your opinion, what is the greatest challenge that women are facing today in music and how can they overcome that challenge?
That's a really good question. I think that like my answer 6 months ago would have been and was that there weren't enough women at the top making decisions, right? And so if you don't have those decision makers, then how does that kind of trickle down, and how are people being included with different perspectives in mind? And I think that that's really changing. I think that so much of like the hard stuff we've been through over the last year, whether it's the pandemic and all having to be at home. And so now we're seeing people's home lives a little more, and we're a little bit more flexible around what people are dealing with in their own personal lives, and not putting up a wall pretending like everything is cool and okay. Like all of this, my 4-year-old is like running around naked half the time in my background, and that's just what my life is, whether people see it or not. So that's been great. I think like the Black Lives Matter movement, I think like the recent, PI kind of advocacy coming to the forefront. I think all of these like really, really serious issues of lack of representation, and like not having, like not holding space in a workplace for people when they're dealing with something outside of the workplace or in the workplace, like not being able to have tough conversations was really holding us back a lot. Whether it was like, a friend of mine who would say like, why do people always come to me when they're looking for a rap artist or a hip hop artist? Like, because I'm Black does not mean I listen to rap or hip hop. Like, I actually listen to Americana music. So like completely irrelevant. And like those microaggressions really weigh on me during the day. Or like me feeling like I couldn't say to someone, oh, I can't have this meeting at noon because I have to pick my daughter up from preschool. Well, now that's just the way it goes because I'm like physically unable to be on Zoom. And I have to say to people, here's the line in my sand, like being able to like have these conversations a little bit more, I think has changed the way we all work a little bit. And certainly I think there have been calls to action to say that we won't stand for discrimination in the workplace or sexual harassment in the workplace, or even like, issues that are just like not thoughtful around someone's mental health. Like if someone is, overworked and feeling stressed, that's something that, I've been dealing with a lot recently is younger folks who are interns saying like, this is just too much and I can't. And just making sure that we're really mindful of everyone and their mental health. I think all of this stuff is really top of mind. And I think that we're actually really seeing change. I think like the Recording Academy, has been doing a lot of work recently. And so whether it's not having certain committees put together of people who are making decisions in smaller groups, doing away with that stuff is huge, and makes sure that more people who are making the decisions, whether it's an award or someone getting a job, that stuff is really transformational. And I think as long as we kind of keep the pressure on, I think we'll continue to see it happening. And like we said, I think people who are younger getting into the industry, that's just the mindset that they're coming in with. And it's no longer like this really ego-driven environment. It's really more kind of, kind of a mindset of inclusion and diversity, and like an openness, hopefully, that we can maintain. I think it'll be really, really impactful. And so I think kind of that barrier that we had up before, I think is starting to really shift. And I think there will be a lot more people at the top making decisions who are more representative of the artists and the fans who we serve.
Lovely. And what advice would you give to a young woman hoping to work in the industry?
I would say, figure out where in the industry you want to work, or if you don't know where, like get experience and really learn. There are so many different areas of this business. I think that people outside of the industry, it's even inside the industry, don't realize there are like so many millions of things you can do. If you're really into accounting, but you want to work in the music industry, it doesn't mean like we have accounting departments, right, just devoted to musicians and to artists and to teams. So like if you're interested in being in the industry, there are a million things you can do. You just have to kind of find your path. And I would say like get involved in women in music, and whether it's volunteering, hopefully in person when we're back in person, at an event, or whatever it is, just get involved and meet people, because that really does make a difference. And even if it doesn't make a difference like in a week, starting those relationships and just having that network, I think you get to a point where you realize how many people you actually know and work with and talk to on a regular basis. And that network just keeps growing and growing until it really does become impactful for you. So definitely get involved and find your little spot.
This is the final question. When it's all said and done, what do you hope to be remembered for?
Oh my goodness, such a good question. I hope to be remembered for being like a kind person, like competent, like really good at my job, an advocate for my artists, and just like a really fun, kind person to be around. Truly, I would prefer that than success. And I think especially in this business, it's really wonderful when you get to meet other people who are really interesting and open and like show vulnerability and are just like in it to support our artists and work on the behalf of great art, and are just here to kind of help one another and enjoy this. Because I think, you know, if you're working in the music business, the most important thing is that you're also enjoying it because it's really tough. And so making sure we're like enjoying one another and here for one another, and supporting this great art that makes a really big impact, for a lot of people around the world. So that's it.
That was an amazing answer. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you.